Please welcome LeJune Montgomery Tabron, President and CEO, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and Kate Warren, EVP and Executive Editor, DevEx.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be at my first Solve. I believe this is your first
This
Solve,
is mine
too,
as
right,
well.
LeJune? This is great. Been really inspiring conversations so far. So something that struck me is several of the speakers before have been talking about how we really need to do systemic, drastic change to approach the challenges that are ahead of us. And I want to talk a little bit about Kellogg Foundation's theory of change. So you work with children and families in many parts of the world, including Illinois, Hawaii, Brazil, different indigenous communities, Haiti, Kenya, Sierra Leone, list goes on. And you have a theory of change that really focuses on long-term investment, community-driven solutions, and really focusing on the root causes of inequity. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you see that theory of change really leading to more sustained equitable progress.
Absolutely, and you are correct. When we think about our theory of change, I would add to what you've said is that we believe solutions reside within communities. People have the capacity to improve their own lives, and what we're doing is fueling their innovation and their creativity. We do believe that it is long-term and that if we can address the systemic structures that actually perpetuate inequality and disparity, that not only will we improve the lives of some children, but we will improve the lives of more children. So our theory is about looking at the systems that are broken, that don't work for everyone, and trying to innovate and create new systems that are equitable, that allow every child to thrive.
And do you have any examples you can share of that
Yes.
in practice?
I do. Recently, we launched what we called our Racial Equity 2030 campaign. And what we were looking for is great, innovative, and actionable solutions from all over the world to the most disparate structures that we see in our society today, and thinking about where are the ideas and the best innovations to dismantle these systems and make them work. So we sent out a call. We got over 1,400 applications from all over the world, over 70 countries, and we selected the top 5. And these ideas are looking at some of the most problematic systems and structures that we encounter. The first of the 5 was about creating an anti-racist education system for the entire country of Brazil. Another example was looking at indigenous land rights and creating law and practices that would allow indigenous people to preserve their land. One on environmental justice, teaching people in communities how to advocate for their own rights as it relates to environmental justice. One was about, in Chicago, working with young people to address issues of healing and social justice by themselves, young people leading and taking the action. And then finally, in Hawaii, addressing youth incarceration and actually seeking to eliminate youth incarceration completely. So those were our 5 finalists, really bold solutions, and what we wanted to do was scale these innovations and then hopefully replicate them. But we invested $90 million in total, $80 million for these top 5 finalists, and we hope by 2030 that these issues will have solutions that we are pursuing greatly, and in some cases they will be totally erased.
Well, what I love about your approach is this focus on the long-term investment. And we heard Vanessa Carey earlier talking about how critical that is. And you've made a generational commitment to places like the Yucatan and Haiti. And when you give grants to your grantees, you're often doing like 8-year grants, which in the world of philanthropy, where it's often 1, 2, maybe 3 years, that's a pretty unique model. So I'd love to hear about why you are choosing to invest in that way, what benefits you see from that, but then also how you think about building lasting sustainable systems that can still thrive even when your funding is no longer there.
Absolutely, and we always think about sustainability, but we learned a lot from our grantees, and we know that if they're spending half their year fundraising, and if they don't know how they're going to be sustained as they pursue these very complex problems, that we're not getting the best of our organizations. They have issues with staffing. These are real organizations, and they're operating on very limited resources. So we want to be the fuel that keeps them moving and keeps them going. And so, one, when we go into a community, when we name them a priority place, we say it's for a generation, because we don't want communities to think, how long is this philanthropy going to be here? Because that's not, that's insecurity. And in some ways, we want to be the partner in community. We want them to know that we're going to be there, and that we want to be a thought partner, not only a funder, but someone that cares deeply about the community. And whenever we name a priority place, we name national people from the place to lead the work. So we're trying to work alongside our grantee partners and our communities. So that's the issue of the, generational commitment. It's about trust building, and we know that in this work you have to build trust. And then finally, on the issue of sustainability, the way we work is all about sustainability. Our DNA is really focused on building leadership, so we look and support great leadership in communities, which we heard is desperately needed these days. We also look for community engagement, because we know that sustainability happens within the leaders and within the people in the community. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, we look at issues of racial equity and we support racial healing, because at the end of the day, we really have to break down these barriers and these systems that perpetuate inequality. And we have to focus, as you mentioned, on the root cause of those. And the leaders in the community and the people in the community have the agency and the passion and the resolve to take down these systems once they understand how they perpetuate inequality.
So speaking of leadership, you've been, I think you celebrate 37 years with Kellogg, 10 years as CEO, so yes. Amazing, congratulations.
Thank you.
So when you look back in that sweep of time that you've been there, I think right now it feels very dire, right? It feels like everything's going wrong. It's a little scary, it's a little overwhelming. I would love to hear kind of how you think about that and putting it in context of the work you've been doing over these years. Do you feel like we are really at an unprecedented moment? And if so, how is that adapting your leadership style? But also maybe, are there some things out there that are happening? I think we talked a little bit about these opportunities and spots of hope out there, yes, that maybe is not quite as dire as often the headlines portray it to be.
Right, so, almost 4 decades in one institution is an interesting journey that I've been on. And part of my hope comes from the transformation that I've encountered within the organization that I now lead. Over these decades, our focus has been, how do you practice what you preach? Mm-hmm. And our own organization had to take a journey around how do we build community from within to give us the credibility to then build community throughout the world. So our organization went from, but when I arrived there in 1987, not a very diverse organization, pretty traditional structures that maybe weren't serving everyone. And over this time, we've transformed ourselves from the inside out. I became the first African-American woman leader in the organization. Amazing. And that was part of the journey. And we've continued to think about what it actually takes to lead this work with authenticity. And part of that has been, my own journey and how I think organizations and leaders need to take the lead and actually have a vision about what the future could be.
Yeah.
And, that's your second part of the question, what gives me hope? One, I have hope because we've done it. We've seen it. And we've seen this transformation all over the world as we encounter our work in communities. And today, what I think about is I get inspired by the backlash we're seeing right now, because I believe we must be showing promise and showing progress, or no one would really care to try to tear us down and prevent us from the continuous momentum that we have right now. So I get inspired by the challenges before us, but I do believe we are continuing to identify great innovation and ways to make sure at the end of the day that every child and every family has an opportunity to thrive, and we have to create these opportunities in order for our nation and the world to thrive. And we're seeing the connection and seeing allies show up who understand that this is our shared fate.
And so you have, you released a tool that kind of charts out, gives a roadmap for leaders on how to navigate all kinds of scenarios, climate crisis, growing conflict, and growing division, generative AI, all these things that are changing. So I'd love to just maybe give us a few highlights from that roadmap. What would you like to see in 10 years? What are a few things that excite you about that plan?
Yes, thank you. And we partner with the Institute for the Future, and we've created what we call this, the map of the future. And we call it Lighting Up the Future for Children. And the way we derived this map was through a listening process where we listened all over the world, across all of our grantee populations. We had one-on-one convenings, we had virtual convenings, but at the end of the day, we listened to them and we taught them practices of forecasting and future thinking, right? And then from all of this work, they identified what they think were the signals for the future that we should be aware of today that should help guide our work. And one example, one that I really appreciate, was called systemic othering. And so now we know that our structures and our systems don't serve everyone. And think about systems being created with that same bias, but with the speed of technology. And where now we have disparities, that could be amplified just through technology. The biases would create, and more people would have health outcomes that are not equitable, education outcomes that are not equitable, et cetera. So, that's what they call, a signal of what we should be thinking about as we think about the future. So then I get really excited about some work that's already happening to reverse that trend. And we have a grantee that's working on what they call a local voices network, where we are allowing people to share stories and connect so that people are not, through technology, dehumanized. And instead, they're learning stories from others and creating empathy around what others may experience that they may not have the context to understand. So, to think you can use AI for good and begin to build the anecdote for some of the systemic bias that may be created in the future.
Well, I love your to practice what you preach. And so
Exactly.
hopefully everyone in the room is doing that in the work they do. But Lejeune, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you.